This time, thank you for this. And put all this together. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, indeed, I'm very excited to have these distinguished panelists with us today. And I'm going to start with Bret Schanzenbach, the CEO of the Vista Chamber of Commerce, CEO and president. He's been there for several years, and prior to that, he was on the board and chairman of the Vista Chamber, so he has a long-time interest and knowledge of business in the community of Vista and in North County. So, Bret Schanzenbach, you can take your position. We also have our newly elected Councilwoman, Amanda Rigby, longtime member of the Republican Party in San Diego. Will be one of our panelists. And also, North San Diego County Association of Realtors, the VP of Government Affairs, Ernie Cowan. Now, these three panelists are going to talk about what Gary has already alluded to. What is the community of Vista in the housing market, in the business market, and how is the city and its elected officials and paid staff helping or hindering progress in the community of Vista? So the way we're going to do this is we're going to have each of the speakers talk for 3 to 5 minutes about their particular area of expertise, and then we're going to start asking them some questions about their comments. If you have a question, we would like you to fill it out on a 3x5 card, and we'll come around and pick those up and we'll get those questions asked. So with that, I'm going to start with Ernie Cowan, who's going to talk about the real estate market, how it was prior to the 2008 crash, what it was perhaps at the lowest point in recent history and what it is now. Stuff like median family income, job growth, home affordability, property and personal crime incidents, and the strength of the government. So, Ernie?
Thanks, Cliff. Thank you, Cliff, and good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight. And despite the announcement that said I was a realtor, I'm not a realtor, and I don't play one on TV. But I am a government affairs director, in which I tell my 5,000 realtor members that I'm the person they hire to protect them from the people they elect. And if you think about that, and that's not malicious, it's well-meaning. You know, a lot of people get elected to office and want to do well and try to do well, but they don't know our industry, they don't know your industry, they don't know about what you're interested in, and they often do things that inadvertently cause problems. And so my job is to kind of act as a Secretary of Defense, if you will, for the realtors, and to negotiate with foreign governments like Vista, Oceanside, Escondido, San Marcos, to make sure that it's not affecting you as the real estate consumer or our realtors who also represent you. Now, I've got some slides that we'll go into in just a minute. Are they up? Okay. But let me first of all give you a little bit of an overview of the market in general. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, the local real estate market is not affected currently so much by the local government process as it is by the national economy. And as you all know, towards the middle of 2006, we saw the economy starting to go bad and things started to go down, and the real estate market, of course, goes with it. The good news is, back in 2006, the affordability index was down at around 10%. What that meant was less than 10% of the people in San Diego County could afford to buy a median-priced home. 10%, imagine that, through a conventional financing process. Now we're up to a much higher rate of about 45 to 55%, depending on where you are in the market in San Diego County. But that's good news right now. If this is a great time to buy a house, and we'll tell you a little bit why. And then when we maybe get into the discussion phase, we could get into a little bit of some of the regulatory issues that we deal with every day in the real estate market, and how it affects you as a consumer, either selling or purchasing a home. So if we can go to the second slide. We are highly coordinated here. I love it. You'll see that the North County single-family detached homes, and I'm assuming that's probably what most of you live in, is a single-family detached home. That's just a freestanding home. You can see how median prices have declined from year-end of 2007, that's on the far left there, up to today, and you'll see that in about year-end of 2010, we started to see prices starting to rise again. And I'm happy to say that this year, or at the close of 2012, housing prices have started to increase now, so that the county median is at $450,000. Now here in Vista, in zip codes 81, 83, and 84, your highest median income is in 92081 with a $346,500 median price. 92084 is at $330,000, and 92083 is at $275,000. And again, those numbers we see are increasing, and there's a number of indexes that we see are increasing along those lines. If I go to the next slide, please. Again, this is just a broad graph showing the monthly median prices for North County single-family detached homes on a graph. It kind of charts the other graph. And you can see, starting in December, I don't know if you can pick that up, but starting in December of 12, or actually December of 11, you can just see it's kind of an uphill slant. Slow, but sure, so that's good. The next slide shows active listings for detached homes. This is the inventory. How many homes are on the market? Now, here's a problem here. You see here, active listings, the number of homes available for sale on the market is going way down. Part of that is because because prices are so low, investors with cash are going in and snapping up homes. The minute they come on the market, if it's a good deal, they're taking them. And so the inventory is very low. That's the biggest problem right now. If we go to the next slide, which is also a good news slide, and that's distressed properties. Those are foreclosures and things like that. Those are also going down. So that shows that the market is stabilized. People who are in trouble have either gotten out or figured out a way to solve their problems, and so we're seeing fewer and fewer distressed properties on the market. And the next slide is the housing market summary. Just basically, single-family dwellings, the median home price is up 4.65% in the last year. This was at the end of 2012. The single-family dwelling units sold was up 19%. The total sales volume was up 22%. As I mentioned, there's lower inventory. Distressed inventory is also down. And of course, low mortgage rates, along with low inventory, is pushing up prices and sales, which is good for you. If you want to sell now, this is a great time to do it. Then the last slide is housing affordability. This is a good index. Right now, ranging from 33 to 38% countywide in 2012, and from 45 to 48% in North County in 2012. So again, this is a desirable place to go. How much time have we got? We're good. All right, thank you. I'll be here to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Ernie. Don't forget to write your questions down so that we can get those at the end of the discussion. Now we'll have Amanda Rigby, our new councilwoman for the city of Vista, to talking about the business climate a little bit, business license fees, how that compares to others communities in the area.
Thank you, Cliff. And thank you, everyone, for being here this evening and for hosting this very important discussion for us. And I also, on a personal level, want to say thank you again for your hospitality and for being a support group for me during the campaign and through the election. And hopefully you will be there with ideas, suggestions, and input for me throughout my 4 years here on the City Council. So again, I thank you, and I thank you for having me. The business in Vista is actually doing pretty well, and I know we'll hear more about that from our CEO over here at the Chamber. But a couple of the really exciting things we wanted to talk about was the craft brew business. Sorry, I had some dental work today, so if my mouth isn't working, bear with me. You can talk to me after. The craft brew business has been doing really well in Vista, and we're really happy about that. And they've also done, this is our 50th anniversary, just a sidebar, and they've done their 50th anniversary brews. So if you haven't been over to visit them and drink some of that, I understand they're pretty good. I had a couple, but I'm not a beer drinker, so. But we've been very successful in fostering that growth, and some of those businesses, as well as other businesses, have been looking to go to Carlsbad or San Marcos or Oceanside, and we have a really great city staff that has been talking to them and courting them and have brought those businesses here to Vista. And one of the things that we've done in Vista is we have what's called Vista's Care Business Walk, where city staff and other volunteers in the city go out to the businesses in Vista and they talk to the business owners about what they're doing, how they like doing business in Vista, and if they're happy or what else can we do for them. And we had the first one in downtown Vista as well. I don't know if you want to talk to that, but in the business park, 96 companies in the business park responded to our survey and our discussions. 95% of those said that they're not expecting to move outside of Vista. 84% said they're satisfied with the current location. 11% were saying that they needed to upgrade to a bigger location because they're expanding their business. They also said that they're not looking to lay off anymore. Their hiring will either stay what it is, and some of the business are actually looking to increase their staffing. So that's really good news, meaning more jobs for the citizens and residents of Vista. So that was really good news. 77% were expecting to significantly grow their business over the next 3 years, which is an increase from 2011, which only 60% of the businesses said that. In addition, we did, as I said, the first business walk in the Central Vista Business Improvement District, also part of the downtown area. 69% of those business respondents saw an increase in foot traffic, and 64% experienced sales growth over the second half of 2012. Businesses in the downtown area are overall happy with their location, and 90% of the respondents said that they do not plan on moving their business. 74% again said that they expect their business to increase in sales over this year. In addition, the transient occupancy tax has increased with the opening in June of this past year with a Hyatt in Vista, and so that makes 2 upscale hotels that are helping with that. The sales tax, Prop L sales tax, brings in, I think, almost $5 million a year to the city for use of the what we had put into that. Thank you. But one of the things that we did want to talk about was Vista's unemployment rate has gone down from 10.4 in 2011, and as of December 31st, unemployment in the city of Vista was 9%, which is really good news because overall in California it's 9.7%. So our businesses are picking up, our hiring is picking up here in Vista. Business licensing in Vista, it starts off at your license fee at $15 and it goes up from there. A home-based business is an additional $45 application fee depending on what, that's the application fee. Anything additional to that depends on what you're doing with your business or any infrastructure that you would need. A lot of those additional fees actually are not business license fees. Those are additional building permit fees or any building actual costs that you would have associated with that. Because I know a couple of people had asked me about home-based businesses. So in addition to the $15 business license, is $45 home application fee. Now my understanding is, we can talk more about that afterward. Thank you so very much.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me and having me here today. In talking about Vista and some of the business aspects of how Vista is doing, we have a very large business park out in Vista. And I know Mr. Chuck Rabel's here. He likes to call that the productive sector of our community. And I think he's correct in stating that. We have over 14 million square feet of industrial space in our business park, which is very similar to the Carlsbad Business Park and is very large, much larger than our other neighbors in this region. So approximately 800 businesses are out there in our business park. They employ somewhere between 20 and 23,000 people who come to work out there every day. So it is definitely the economic engine or backbone of our local community here in Vista. And one of the good things here for us in Vista is that our vacancy rate in that business park is actually still very low. And it's low compared to our neighbors, but it's also low historically compared to how Vista has done in the past. Currently, and this is coming from a report from some real estate brokers who specialize in commercial real estate, Vista's vacancy rate is at 7.3% in our business park, which is near a 10-year low for us. So the business park is doing well overall. And just for comparison, 7.3% in Vista compared to, say, Carlsbad's at 13.8%. And that's with a very similar square footage, as I mentioned before, at about 14 million square feet. Oceanside's even higher at 14.7%. And then some of our other neighbors are a little bit lower, but they have a much, much, much smaller business park than we do. So those are good numbers and those are good things. However, our businesses out there are dealing with the same challenges that this group is familiar with that hit them from the state level, regulatory challenges, and things of that nature that make it very difficult to do business here. And what we are seeing here locally is that effect that some businesses are reaching the threshold where the environment is just too hostile and they're starting to move out. We had a manufacturing business that was a very good corporate citizen in this area, very active in this community, that moved all their research and development operations out to Nevada. They left their core manufacturing here, luckily, but they moved their R&D to Nevada, and all the new stuff that they're doing is not happening here in Vista anymore. We have another very large company that's been in business 30 years, employs 250 people out here in the business park, and they're seriously considering right now relocating out of California completely because the regulatory environment is so stringent. And I know one of the things we were asked to talk about is, what can we do? What can we do to make a difference? And obviously that's a challenge. We want to go and vote and get the right people in. A lot of the local representatives from right here in this local area, our state senator, our state representative, are fairly business friendly, but they go up to Sacramento and the environment is completely hostile to them, and so there's challenges. But that doesn't mean it's a lost cause. I got a letter from Senator Mark Weiland, who's our local state senator here in this area, and he is working on a bill right now. This letter just came a few days ago. He's working on a bill right now to change one of the things that hinders our manufacturing businesses, and that is the fact that we're one of only 3 states in the nation that charges sales tax on manufacturing equipment purchases. And it's very debilitating for these businesses. They want to go out and make a big purchase for something. It could be $1 million piece of equipment, and that sales tax is a huge hindrance to doing that. So Senator Mark Weiland is championing this bill, but what he's trying to do, he's trying to reach across the aisle. He's trying to find a reasonable person from the other party who understands the effect that this is having on business. And so he's working on that. So it's not just coming from one party versus the other, but he's trying to get both parties behind it. It's not easy. It's not easy work, but we need to be supporting it. We need to be writing letters to the governor. We need to be writing letters to any representative who we can to try and support stuff like this to get things to change. It's not going to be a short, easy road, but right now, as many of you know, California is ranked 50th out of 50 in business friendliness. 50th out of 50, and that's by like multiple different measurements. And we were just recently ranked by a group called the American Tort Reform Foundation as the #1 judicial hellhole in America. I mean, it's just very hard for business to succeed here with that kind of environment. So, getting vocal, doing those grassroots things where we, get on our computers, send emails, not just to our own local representatives, because some of those are, they get it, some of those ones that we voted in locally here, but branching out beyond those and letting our voice be heard. One of the challenges we have at the chamber is when we come across our those from organized labor, they're all extremely organized, and a bill will come up that has to do with styrofoam in the in restaurants, fast food restaurants, and every union in the entire state will sign on to support that bill. I mean, you'll have the teachers union, the nurses union, stuff that doesn't apply at all to them, but they're just instantly signed on. And so from the pro-business side, we're trying to get better galvanized so that we can support things like what Senator Mark Weiland's doing and be ready when those bills come up, because you have to act quickly.
Let's give our panel a hand. Thank you for this. Now it's your turn. I've got a handful of questions that have been given to me. If you will be so kind, write your questions on a card, and our efficient and nimble ushering staff will rush towards you, even as you hold them up. And don't break a hip, anybody. All right. And while we're doing that, one other thing I wanted to do, just while we were speaking, we had another VIP come in, Gary Feline. Will you wave? Gary Feline, Oceanside City Council member. Thank you so much. And we also have Sherry Rowe, the president of the Vista Republican Federated Women. I always get that. Is that the right order? Oh yeah, okay. Thank you, Sherry, for coming today. And so thank you for your questions, and we're going to take about 10-15 minutes to answer your questions, and we'll hold their feet to the fire. Here we go. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, I got a couple of questions to prime the panel here. I'm going to start with asking a question to an individual, and then if the others have comments, please feel free to make those comments. So Bret, is the business climate better, worse, or about the same in Vista as it is in surrounding communities? And I realize, especially with the San Diego County's Prosperity on Purpose, the effort to work together, and that's all very noble, but at the same time, we still have this little bit of friendly competitiveness. Let's do a little better. Let's see where we can thrive.
It's better in Vista. It's just better, flat out. Honestly, we do have some companies that have moved into the area in the last couple of years that have talked about the fact that Vista is the most business-friendly city that they've operated in. And, you know, I take that as a slight pat on the back because the Chamber and some of you in the room who are here have been involved in the Chamber for years, have been working with City Hall to make it more business-friendly. So I think that's something that you can take a little bit of pride in. So the City of Vista, though, one of the reasons I think it is a little bit better is because it recognized years ago that it had to do something extra to attract and retain businesses. Carlsbad has kind of a more desirable zip code and the coast and things like that, and so to be competitive, Vista had to go the extra step, the extra mile, and I think that was effective, and it did create a little bit more welcoming climate for local businesses. So that's my 2 cents on it.
I'll chime in on that too as an outsider. I used to be the mayor in Escondido and the chairman of the board of the Escondido Chamber, but the other component of business environment is the city. And you have a very accommodating and a very friendly city here in terms of the regulatory process. And I'll give you an example. One of my realtor members in a city that I won't name to the west Oceanside, and Gary, no offense, because Gary knows about this and Gary tried to help out on this, but she was going to remodel her real estate office and move within the same commercial complex. She wasn't moving from one place to another. So she went to the city to get a permit. You have to ask yourself why you need a permit, but anyway, they did that. And they told her that she, for carpet drapes and moving a couple of electrical outlets, she needed a complete architectural rendering. The cost of the whole thing was $10,000 in permit fees to the city. She was outraged. She said, well, I looked in Carlsbad. Carlsbad was $2,500. Vista was $1,500 for the same thing. Now, she thought about moving. She thought about leaving Oceanside, but like she said, I've been there for 23 years. People know me, and I couldn't do it. But with the help of some of the council members, I think Gary was one of them, they were able to reduce those fees, but the man on the street that walked in, you or anybody else, would have paid the $10,000. That's not business friendly.
Thank you, Bret. And Ernie? Question for Amanda. Is the service that the City of Vista, the staff essentially, provides on par with the cost to the individual citizen, basically the per capita sale, the taxes that people pay for the services they get? We know over the last couple of years that there's been some furloughs and some service cuts, and I think that's happened in cities throughout North County, but how does Vista compare to our neighbors?
Thank you. Actually, Vista compares very well with our neighbors as far as the city staff goes. We have an amazing city staff. They work a lot of hours. The staff that we have works a lot of hours, a lot of overtime. They're at a lot of community events. But yes, the time and energy that they put into working on business licensing, building permits, etc., is in keeping with what the actual costs are. And I can say from some of the surrounding cities that our fees are much lower than some of the surrounding cities. Business license in Carlsbad, I think, is $150 versus $15 in Vista. So Vista actually is doing very well in that area.
This is for Ernie to lead, but I think Amanda, you might want to comment as well. Vista is about to update the housing element portion of their general plan. It's in draft form right now on the homepage of the City of Vista. In it, there are comments about the need for more low-income housing. Question is, isn't there a lot of low-income housing in Vista already? And doesn't this contribute to Vista having the lowest median income in North County?
Don't get me started. Yes and no. Yes, there is a lot of low-income housing in Vista, but the way the state calculates it, it doesn't count. And so therefore the state mandates that you build new stuff and to accommodate low-income housing. And the problem is how do you do it? It's not market-driven, it's regulatory-driven, and that's the problem. Builders will tell you, if they can build, we're allowed to build 800 square foot studio apartments and sell them for $199,000 or less, which they could do, they could sell them like Cracker Jacks. But the regulatory environment will allow them to do that. So there's a huge problem with one size fits all. And anytime you get the state involved, that's all it is. It's one size fits all. They look at the regulatory process and say, we mandate that you do this, we mandate that you do that, but you can't count this, you can't count that. Encinitas is going through this same process right now. And all of those older, dilapidated homes along the coast that ought to be replaced, or ought to be rented out, which they are, to lower income folks, are not counted in the housing count in terms of satisfying the low income mandates. So it's very perplexing. The whole thing ought to be fixed, but I don't have a good answer for it. But I suspect if you leave it to the locals, you guys know how to solve your own problems. Get the state out of your back pocket.
Ditto what Ernie said. Because the state doesn't recognize all of the low-income housing that we actually do have, Vista actually has officially 2 low-income sites within our city limits, and there are 2 more, maybe 3 more on the drawing board to happen for us. And again, like he said, these are mandated by the state. The state says that if you have this population numbers, etc., you have to have this much affordable housing in your community, and it has to be near your transit districts, and it has to be near your downtown, and you have to do all of these other things. So that comes back to what Bret was talking about in working with our state officials. And one of the things that I had lobbied for, I'm just going off the reservation here real fast, as a new elected official, is I recognize that a lot of the stranglehold that we're experiencing in Vista and some of the things in other communities, what we're experiencing that we're not completely happy with and would like to change, we can't on a local level. It's from the state, and that's where some of our issues come from. So I'm so excited to have been appointed to the California League of Cities as the representative for the City Council to the state of California. So I will be going back and forth to Sacramento and working with our state officials. And just as Mark Weiland has put a hand out to me, so have many other state legislatures that don't represent Vista, but they represent what we're trying to do, and they want to help us, and they need our help to get more momentum for what we need to do in Sacramento. And to the other end, regarding new building projects, whether it's affordable housing or something different, being a charter city, which we voted to do in 2007, gave us the opportunity to do bidding on projects that the city could choose who to work with, instead of doing what they call the PLA, which is the Project Labor Agreement, mandating that we use certain unions for certain projects. Well, the state right now is trying to change that. They're trying to get even charter cities to only do permitting using PLAs, which we don't want to do. We want to have the freedom and flexibility as a city to hire who's going to be best for the project. So that's one of the things that, working with the California League of Cities, that we're trying to draft some legislation, and they need local input, and they need local people to help with the state on that. So it is a state stranglehold on affordable housing as well as many other things, but we have some people here in North County, as well as throughout San Diego County, that are going to be working with the state to try to help us release some of the stranglehold.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Ernie. Okay, we're short on time here, so I've got 2 questions. First one for Bret. Downtown Vista seems to have a lot of closed business. Is that perception, just perception, or is it true?
Downtown Vista actually is improving drastically as we speak. In the past, it has had a lot of closed businesses, but currently, with one of our microbreweries, as you mentioned, coming down, Mother Earth moved down there and has put a spark into downtown Old Main Street Vista, And so we have restaurants coming to life, we have a new coffee shop opening, a new real estate office opening, so lots of stuff opening actually.
Thank you. Okay, so last question, and I'm going to make it a two questions, a two-part question, real estate related. What happens if the interest rates go back to historical norms? And what happens if the banks, all the bank-owned properties, if they get dumped back on the market?
Well, it's true that banks are holding vast amounts of foreclosed property, but it's a business decision on their part. It's very unlikely that they're going to dump them on the market because that would so depress the market by putting too much inventory out there. They're not likely to do that. What they're going to do is dribble it out over time. So that should not have an impact on the market, I would think, either way. Interest rates, of course, is another factor. I remember back in the 80s, early 80s, I paid 21% to buy a home and was glad to get it. Some of you maybe, oh, you're all too young. But some of you might remember that. But, you know, so is it going to affect the market? It's going to affect affordability, but it's probably not going to affect the market. People are going to still buy homes because they have to have them. That's going to be the answer to that.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap here right now. We have a couple that we didn't get to. Thank you, Ernie, Amanda, and Bret, for your time to get ready for this and your participation today, coming here this evening. And thank you all for your questions.
It's my understanding that they're going to stick around if possible. You're going to be able to stay. But those that can stay will, and that way you can have an opportunity to be able to speak to them and get your questions answered. One of the things that we've been hearing about nonstop for how many news cycles is the sequester. And the sequester was, it was an amazing feat of political shenanigans, if you ask me. But a lot of people are very confused about what actually was the sequester, what kind of impact is it going to have. And so in order to get to the bottom of that, where did Dr. Gov't go? Dr. Gov't, could you join us since you're up next? Thank you. Don't want to interfere with your conversation. So because Dr. Gov't has the gift of taking the complex and making it easy to understand, we've asked him to kind of give you a review on what the sequester was all about. We've even got some spiffy slides to show you. And let's let Dr. Gov't know how much we appreciate him putting this together for us.
I'm kind of technically deficient. All right, so what is the sequestration? Basically, there was first the gosh, as Barack Obama's friend says, you never let a crisis go unused.
Yeah.
So there was the debt ceiling, and then the solution to the debt ceiling was the super committee, and if the super committee failed, then we would have sequestration. And the purpose of sequestration was to save 2% off the budget. Increase. 2%, we were supposed to cut 2%. So I guess they were planning a 3 or 4% increase, so now we only have a 1.5% increase. I don't know if you can see this or not, but basically the red bar is the cut in defense, about 40 billion, 42, and then domestic discretionary, Medicare, and other mandatory things cut so that they're roughly half of defense. As you can see, it mostly impacts California, Virginia, and Texas, but the darker blue are a little bit impacted and the lighter blue are less. What we're looking at is basically job losses in that particular, is that what? There we go. What we're looking at here is job losses. Over 200,000 are the reds, 100 to 200,000 is Texas, and then the rest are in the 10 to 100,000 range. So, I personally don't see why we have to work. After all, we have the Fed to create money for us. How did we get here? 4 years of no Senate budget. the debt ceiling compromise, the fiscal cliff showed up with the new year. And here's the pathetic, sad part about this whole thing. They decided to raise taxes 8% and only raise spending 1.15%. That's with the sequester, delayed till March 1st. So as you can see, we're still functioning as a country, but we still have politicians in the White House. What's behind this? Basically, the Dems get public union money and welfare recipients. The Republicans get other public union money, and both apply big business for donations. So for the politicians to keep the gravy train coming into their campaigns, they need two things: control of the taxes and control of the distribution of the taxes. And unfortunately, that creates special interests. So the bottom line is the politicians that have been elected reward their friends and punish their enemies. After I wrote this, my wife said, you know, we need something to encourage people. Oh, I should have talked about Christmas in July. So here's some examples. Locally, you have community block grants. And you'll see basically taxes being spent for arts, the Girl Scouts, etc. What do? They basically encourage the people in those particular groups to support the council member that votes for their money. And then on a statewide level, you'll see Alaska's Bridge to Nowhere, projects like that. And then, of course, public employee contracts. In the city, in a school district in Vista, 4 out of the 5 school board members are put there by the union with a $25,000 to $100,000 worth of donations to a $5,000 campaign. Okay, so the consequences are special interests need more spending, and tax control means bureaucratic control. Now, in 1971, the Supreme Court made a decision that bureaucrats are responsible for process, not product. So, if you want your streets paved, don't let the city do it, because bureaucrats are not responsible for pothole filling. They're only responsible for the process where the potholes might get filled. Same is true with education, healthcare. We go on and on and on. It's a Supreme Court decision. There's not much you can do about it. I highly recommend you read The Death of Common Sense. Philip K. Howard is a New York City lawyer. He actually makes this tragedy funny. Okay. So the results are that the White House tours closed, but the security guards that guard the White House tours are not furloughed. Yellowstone is closed for 2 weeks to save $200,000. But it ignores the $1.2 million that the visitors spend in those 2 weeks. And basically the cuts are designed to create maximum harm to the citizens. If Mr. Obama or whichever politician that does the cuts can cause you to be miserable and tell you that they wouldn't want to make you miserable, but we have to do these cuts, or you could just raise your taxes a little. What's his name? Steve Gronke was famous for sending out a survey in Vista asking if you wanted to pay more for city lights or have them turned off. Okay, so a free market solution. Job for job, the private sector is 30% cheaper than the public. The private sector is actually responsible for the product, so you'll end up with a better product. And free markets break up special interests if you don't call it free markets, but in reality create crony capitalism, right? If for instance, if you took a voucher and let all the schools in an area compete for students, that would improve product and lower costs. But if you pick a friend or two, like Solyndra, it doesn't create a free market. And that's it. Any questions? How'd I do, Jim?
You did great.
Thank you.
Hey, I have a question. No one knows
Yes?
this. What can we do? How can we, do we write a letter? Do we make a phone call? Is there something we can do at this point, or is it just, it is what it's going to be?
As far as the sequester is
Yes.
concerned, it is what it's going to be. One of the things I thought would be wonderful is if, because I happen to love the national parks, and I would love to see a letter writing campaign to Senator Feinstein saying, thank you so much, I understand that you have to cut down, close the park 2 weeks early, but why not put it out to whoever, put out a request for proposal and ask for businesses that want to run, private businesses that would want to run the park for 2 weeks or so. Most private businesses would accept 1.2 million for 200,000 outlay.
Exactly.
There you go.
Wonderful. This is the problem that we have, especially in California, because all of the politicians are bought and paid for by special interests, especially labor unions. So they're not going to give up those jobs. Not labor unions, but also the public employee unions. And it's just a powerful lobby to overcome. So that's why you're here tonight, right? So we can make a difference locally and take a stand. Fortunately, we have some people that do stand for our values.